So folks, this is Dr. Anthony Fauci, obviously, and this is our science summer research group. A number of our students who are working in biology labs, chemistry labs, physics labs, neuroscience labs, math and computer science, and so they're sort of all over the map in terms of what's going on. And so I thought this would be an opportunity for them to ask you questions and talk a little bit about the research they're doing.
So why don't we just have you ask me any question, anything you want to talk about, maybe tell me a little bit about what you're doing. Don't be shy. There you go.
So my name's Emma, and I am studying the surface of gold and how molecules attach to them. And my question for you is just, I'm wondering what your favorite book to read for pleasure is.
You know, it's very interesting. Before COVID, I would alternate. I would read about, I say, 2 books a month. And I was doing a lot of traveling then as part of my responsibilities, which I don't do much now. I'm sort of wed to Washington for the most part, except for important things like this. Thank you very much. And I would alternate between real, just brainless spy novels on one hand and biographies and history on the other. So I've been reading biographies of Winston Churchill, biographies of Andrew Jackson, biographies of presidents and things like that. So I really like that, just to get a feel for what other people have gone through crisis times. I never would have imagined in my wildest dreams when I went into medical school that I would be in a position I'm in right now, which is what I was telling the president just a little bit ago, that one of the big lessons that I have learned literally from the time I left here and went to medical school is to expect the unexpected. Because a lot of the things that you have to have structure and training like you're all getting right now. It's absolutely critical, because you can't just go in amorphous. I mean, that's not going to work. It may feel free-floating and kind of nice for a while, but it's going to get you nowhere. But once you do get that foundation, you really need to keep an open mind that there's going to be opportunities that are going to be put in front of you that probably your training and your instinct and all the kind of things that you learned but don't even realize you've learned allow you to make a decision. And my entire career has been opportunities that I did not predict that came in front of me, that I instinctively took that pathway. And then here I am in a situation that if when I was sitting on this campus a long, long time ago, and somebody would have asked me, give me a prediction of where you think you'd be, as I was telling your president that, I would have said I'd be practicing medicine in New York City on, First Avenue and 68th Street, teaching and taking care of patients. And I did that for a while, but that's not what I'm doing right now, as you probably know. That has very little to do with the books I read, but but I thought I would get that in anyway, in case you didn't ask. All right, who else? Hey, hi.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Bradshaw. I'm a psychology major, and then I'm a double minor in neuroscience and business ethics. And
wait a minute, neuroscience and business ethics.
Yeah, isn't that great? Liberal arts. So it's actually very well-rounded, but I've actually found it pretty, interdisciplinary, which is really cool. But so I'm doing research this summer actually on 2 fields. I'm in a cognitive neuroscience lab, and I'm doing research on COVID and anxiety, as well as specifically about cognitive control, and I'm looking at eye movements and stuff like that and physiological responses, so that's really cool. I'm actually also doing research on radiology, which I'm picking up one of my studies that my friend who just graduated did. And so my question is for you, where did you live on campus when you were here? Because I've heard Fenwick used to be a dorm, and I was wondering if you lived on campus.
Oh, I absolutely. As a freshman year, I was on the 4th floor at Wheeler.
Okay. Oh, let's go.
Yeah. So I walked up there. The chief took me up to Wheeler on the 4th floor where I was as a first-year student. And there were 4 people in the room with 2 double bunk beds. And I walked into the room, and it looked like the size of a bathroom. And I was trying to figure out how the heck did we fit 4 people in there? So I went from Wheeler, and then I went down, I think, to Alumni, which is down close to Kimball.
Yeah, I lived there last year.
And then I went to one other place that I forgot. And then in my 4th year, is there a dorm called Handelsman?
Hanselman.
Yeah, that's where I was in my senior year.
Okay.
So I remember Wheeler, I remember Alumni, and I remember Handelsman, but somehow or other, one of those others I kind of, there wasn't that was a bad year, I just forgot.
And I also had something else to tell you. So I was a freshman when COVID actually happened, and like when it started, and it was madness when we got sent home. But so, in order to make Holy Cross, like, to continue it, everyone found out you went to Holy Cross eventually when you started, like, showing up on the news. And this is, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to preface this is really weird. We all started photoshopping your head into pictures, like group pictures, like with our friends, and then like your head would be like in the background, and everyone would post it online and call it Fauci Friday. And this went on for like 10 weeks, like religiously every single Friday. So I'm a rising senior, which is crazy to think about, but I don't know, Anna remembers it too. Yeah. Anna took part in it, and then I'm trying to think about anybody else here, but yeah. So I thought I'd tell you that.
Thank you.
Once you found out, you became a legend here. We were all like, yeah, Fauci went here, no big deal.
Well, as I was telling President Rigaud, it's a very interesting dichotomy in the country, where no, it really is, where I don't know what the relative percentage is, but I have, and I think it's a little bit about me, but more about what I've become to symbolize in an arena of lies and disinformation and distortion and conspiracy theories on the part of the extreme far right. And because of the fact that I've stood up against the crazy president, that I've developed almost a cult of people who look to me for a representation and a symbol of honesty and integrity. But there are about 30 million people in the country that want to see me dead, which is really strange. I mean, and I was mentioning to President Rigaud why, when I give commencement addresses and I talk to students like yourselves, I almost plead with you to don't accept the complete normalization of lies, because then we're in trouble if we do that. And you know, when you're at your stage in your life, you got a lot of other things to worry about. You're looking about your own career, your own future, a lot of things in your life. But don't shrug your shoulders and say it's okay for people to look at a TV and the January 6th hearing and see on film what happened, and then you turn to another channel and there are millions of people watching that channel who are denying that it happened. I mean, doesn't that scare you a little bit? It certainly scares me. I mean, it just really does. I don't expect everybody in the room to go out and march against that, but at least don't personally accept it as normality, because it's egregiously abnormal. And what I find that you get so fatigued by that you say, I can't be bothered with that. I mean, don't occupy all your time on that, but just make sure deep down you don't accept that that's okay, because that really is not okay. Anyway, that's my little preaching for the moment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm Ashley Fortune. I'm a rising senior. I work in Professor Basu's neuroscience lab, where we work on behavioral neuroscience and behavioral psychology. I'm a psych major and a neuroscience minor. With that answer, I just wanted to know how did you navigate being in such a tumultuous time with health on the rise, but also kind of this concern of prejudice and misinformation, and still trying to promote message of science being valid and health being valid. I would watch the news and watch how people react to you changing things suddenly, because that's how science works. But people didn't really understand that, and that's what probably led to a lot of lies and a lot of people who were facing intersectional discrimination because of COVID. They relied on this information, but because there was so many people feeding lies and misconception, and you're at the forefront of telling people what's best for them. Like, how do you navigate that? Also in the office with a president who just wakes up and just vibes with like just negativity.
Yeah. It wasn't easy. No, I was just again mentioning this to President Rigaud that you really got to get anchored in your fundamental principles of integrity and realize that you have to be consistent with that. You can't sway from fundamental core principles because of the stress around you. And if that means you're going to have to give up something like your position, the worst people in government are the people who are so afraid of their jobs. So when you are in a position of leadership in government and you have to guide yourself by core principles, you've got to be able to turn around and walk out at any given moment. If you're so wed to the pomp and circumstances of where you are, you're going to slip, and you're going to probably compromise your integrity. And I made a decision, which was a little bit of a long story that I won't give you, that I mentioned to President Rigaud, that I made a decision that every time I walk into the White House or I walk into the Congress and I talk, it may be the last time I ever do it, because I may have to tell somebody an inconvenient truth that they didn't want to hear, and then they shoot the messenger. And I've been the messenger a lot. And I've gotten shot at, but it's missed. And the missing was during the Trump administration, where I had to get up and do something that everybody thought, that was great. I didn't like getting up in front of, 100 million people and contradicting the President of the United States. I wasn't comfortable about that, but I had to do it. Because if I didn't do it, I would have been violating my own integrity, and I would have been letting down the people in this country who I'm responsible for. And I figured I might get fired. I mean, they couldn't fire me from my job because I'm a public servant, but they could have kicked me out of the White House. But they didn't. But what it did do, as I mentioned, it generated tens of millions of enemies of mine who are completely distorted with conspiracy theories that are almost laughable. I mean, I know maybe some of you have heard about it, that Bill Gates and I have put chips in the vaccine. and when you get vaccinated, we're following you around wherever you are. You laugh, there are 20 million people who actually believe that. I mean, they really do. And that sort of scares you a little bit about the country when you have people who actually believe that. But so the answer to your question, short version, is that it isn't easy, but just stick by your principles. No job is worth compromising your integrity. No job in the world, period. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Tim Panic. I am also a Class 6 major on the pre-med track, and my research is focused on synthesizing valuable organic intermediates to lead to the process of making medicinal molecules like beta-lactams, as well as steroids and such. And so my question for you is sort of an intersectionality with Class 6 and pre-med. I wanted to sort of understand how that was sort of formative in your time in med school as well as becoming a doctor.
It was critical. It really was, and that's not just lip service to it. I found that my classics and humanities background of understanding civilizations, and when you study Greek, and we had Greek, Latin, and the Romance language. I took French. And then I don't know whether they have it now, but we used to have a lot of courses in philosophy. In fact, we had more philosophy credits than I think we had science credits. Everything from metaphysics to philosophical psychology to logic to epistemology and on and on. You're not sure what the heck that's going to do for you later on. But when you get out in the world and it's more than just an individual patient that you're examining, making a diagnosis and taking care of, but it allowed me, when particularly I noticed the importance of my background here, when HIV came along, when you were dealing with the interface between a disease, a virus that we didn't know what it was. When I first started working on HIV, it wasn't HIV. It was 1981, and we didn't find the virus until 1983, 84. We didn't have a name for it. I gave it the name AIDS. No, most people don't know that. Myself and 2 or 3 other people in an office at HHS downtown, we decided, why don't we call this the acquired immunodeficiency syndrome? When you're starting dealing with a group of people, young gay men who were totally disenfranchised, totally stigmatized against, injection drug users, commercial sex workers, you realize that disease is in a context, particularly public health issues. And then all of a sudden, people and where they are in society and how society looks at them becomes more than just putting a stethoscope on somebody's chest and listening to their chest. It becomes societal in addition to scientific. And then things really became steeped in what I learned in my classics course, is that when it became clear that HIV was fundamentally a disease in lower income countries, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. 95% of all HIV cases are in the developing world, and 67% are in sub-Saharan Africa. So, a constrained part of the world has 67% of the cases. And then all of a sudden, when I went to Africa multiple times, it became clear that there were things there that you wouldn't even imagine. I mean, the inequities of health, diseases that were commonplace that would kill children, like malaria. 600,000 kids die a year of malaria. Nobody knows about it in the United States. And then all of a sudden, the disparities of health that get mixed up in racism and stigmatism. I mean, it all becomes part of a big, big picture that's part of the humanities. So all of a sudden, it's more than just, the metabolic pathway to a beta-lactamase. It goes beyond that. So it is absolutely had a major impact on how I look at the world, how I look at an individual patient too. I mean, the understanding what goes on in a patient's mind, it's more than just a case. It's a human being. And when you understand that, it makes your job, I think, more fulfilling.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Dr. Fauci. I'm Julia. I'm a psychology and Italian double major on the pre-med track, and I'm in a biomechanics lab here where we look at the physics behind how organisms move using a CT data scanning program. And my question for you is, if you could do one thing differently concerning your medical career, what would it be?
I would have taken an Italian course. What would I have done differently? That's an interesting question. I'm not really sure what I would have done differently. My big challenge, I made a decision when I took on a job of a director of a big institute. I had to leave something on a daily basis that I was really, really good at and that I really, really liked. And that was, as a physician, taking care of individual patients, which now I get referred to me really, really, really difficult cases because of my experience. But what I really miss is the challenge of a day-by-day taking care of a very sick patient, because I put a lot of years of training into doing that. 4 years of medical school, 3 years of residency, 1 year of chief residency, 3 years of fellowship. And I've seen some of the sickest patients in the world, but nobody really knows that. They just know me as a guy who's on television. But, there's another part of me that I miss. So I don't know if I could have done anything different, because I couldn't do both. I can't be responsible for patients in Bethesda at our hospital when I'm doing things like I'm doing right now. So that's the thing that I wouldn't say I would have done it differently, but that's the thing I miss the most. Yeah.
Hi, Dr. Fauci. My name is Elise Delaney, and I, along with a couple peers in this room, work under Dr. Ann Sheehy studying APOBEC 3G, the human innate immune response protein that has the capability to affect HIV infectivity. And along with what you just previously talked about, as someone who has been at the forefront of the fight against HIV/AIDS, as someone going into this field and newly beginning, is there any advice or something important that you learned?
Yeah, well, obviously there's a lot of things that you learn that's important. One of the things that sticks out in my mind is particularly at your stage, is try to pick out something that you're passionate about, not that something that somebody else thinks is important. You know, it's amazing how if you look at all the people that I've been involved with in my career, both purely scientifically as well as medically, that there are different strokes for different folks. There really are. And because somebody really is passionate about one thing and you think, like, why would I want to waste my time on that? You shouldn't demean it because somebody else really gets passionate about it. So if you're passionate about APOBEC, that's great. And if you're not, that's also great. You just got to really pick out something that really turns you on, fully knowing that you may change your mind along the way. I mean, and that happens a lot. I mean, for those who are going to go into medicine, when you go to medical school, you learn a lot of technical stuff, and then you start to see patients. And the first time somebody allows you to do something, you're going to fall in love with that specialty. So when I was in medical school, my first rotation clinically was on OBGYN. So I found out myself, how old was I? 24-year-old medical student delivering a baby like it was the most incredible thing in the world. And then now I wouldn't want to deliver a baby for sure, ever again. But I loved it then. And then I wound up going into internal medicine for any of a number of reasons. So go with your passion. I mean, if you really like something, and it may be something that has nothing to do with APOBEC. When I first started at the NIH, I was involved in looking at antigenic competition. When you give two separate antigens to an animal, is there any preferential response to one versus the other, and what's the regulatory mechanisms associated with that? Which was a good fundamental basic foundation for my going into immunology and infectious diseases. And as it turned out, my real love turned out to be infectious diseases. And I didn't start out doing that at all. Yeah.
Hi, Dr. Fauci. My name is Madeline Bouchard. I'm a biology major, neuroscience minor. I'm studying the seizure gene in flies. And I was just wondering if you had a favorite memory at Holy Cross.
A favorite memory at Holy Cross. I have one stark memory that is not a favorite memory, is going down from Wheeler down to the library. I was walking with Father Deshotels. Does anybody remember Father Deshotels? He was the French professor of French, and we were walking down on a typical midwinter Worcester weather, and he slipped on the ice on the stairs, and I went to grab him to help him. I was a second-year student, and we both fell down that long stairs on the ice. Both of us were banged up, and we became great friends after that because we had that great experience. I don't think there's one thing. It was mostly the friends that I developed, and I saw a few of them last night at the class of '62 reunion, and it was really very, very moving to see. One of the things you got to realize that we're all 80 years old, 81 years old, because that's the class of '62. That you are going to be much shorter when you're 80 than you are right now. I was telling Brett that there was a guy who was a really good friend of mine. He was the tight end on the football team, and he made, I think, second team All New England of the NCAA. A really, really good guy. I had played basketball against him in New York. He played for Mount St. Michael. I played for Regis High School. And I saw him, and I just remember him as this big, healthy, hulky tight end. And here's this guy, he's like my height now. But it was still great to see him. So the memory is just friends. I mean, we have, everybody goes in all different directions, but there are a couple of people that, one in particular is a fellow that I met him in high school because he was against, we were all sports related. He was the captain of the basketball team in St. Agnes of Rockville Center in Long Island, and I was the captain of the basketball team at Regis High School. And we came here together. We were at Holy Cross together. We went to Cornell Medical School together. We did our internship and residency together. I was the best man at his wedding, and we did our fellowship at the NIH together. So that kind of friendship that goes from somebody that was your closest friend at Holy Cross turns out to be somebody that was your dearest friend right up until the time he died. So that's a memory. Yeah. Yeah. Whoever. 1, 2, 3.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for coming to speak with us. I'm Brendan. I'm working in the physics department this summer. And I have a kind of two-part question. Both parts are very related. So you went from being a kid from Brooklyn to a classics major at Holy Cross to one of the most respected medical professionals in the country. And my question is, can you walk us through that progression, some of the decisions you made in navigating your career path, and do you have any advice for us as we approach that same process?
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of things, but just briefly, I mentioned it in one of the comments I made a little while ago, is that always stay open-minded and really expect the unexpected, because things happened in front of me that completely changed the direction of my career. I went to medical school with the thought of going back to New York Hospital and practicing medicine. And when I came to the NIH, I really wanted to use that as a 3-year fellowship, get it over with, and go back to New York and practice medicine. And then all of a sudden, I started to really become enchanted and enamored with this concept of clinical research, where instead of taking one individual patient that you take care of, you do a study that can impact large numbers of patients. So I did that for a bunch of years, and I was very successful at a very young age. I was very lucky. I had a very, very generous mentor who put me on a project that was a real home run from the very beginning. I added a bit of creativity to it, but if it wasn't for his generosity, I would not have been as successful. And I was doing that for about 9 years, and I was on kind of a very comfortable career pathway, thinking that I was just go along and do all the things. Then all of a sudden in 1981, this strange new disease came along among young gay men, and it was HIV, and we didn't know it was. And I made a decision at that point to do something that my mentors said was a mistake, is I completely changed the direction of my career, because I instinctively said, wait a minute, this is a brand new disease, and could I actually be experiencing a brand new disease? That doesn't happen. Where in the history books are there brand new diseases? And it turned out it was, and I made a very fateful decision to change the direction of my research. And again, my mentors thought I was nuts. Like, why are you throwing away a trajectory of career that's so successful? And I started taking care of these scores of young gay men, all of whom were on the verge of death because they had been probably infected for 10 years and they didn't even know it. And I did that for 3 or 4 years in a row, and just doing nothing but trying to squeeze in some research. And then when that happened, we found out what the virus was, and we developed drugs, and we turned around an otherwise deadly disease to become a totally manageable disease. That led me to the prominence enough to be able to be offered the job as director of the Institute, which I didn't want. I really did not want to be a director of anything. I just wanted to take care of patients. And I said, well, maybe if I become the director of the Institute, I could have more of a global impact on infectious diseases. And I did. I took the job under the condition that I'd be able to continue to do some of the things I was doing. And that opened up the total vista for me of global health, international health, and the things I'm doing now. So the lesson is that if I had strictly gone on the linear pathway that I thought I was going on, as opposed to this, I wouldn't be speaking to you here right now. I would probably be in New York, retired or something. but I'm not. I'm here. And it was really what's called the flexibility of expecting the unexpected and being able to make a move. Just so always keep an open mind.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Rose. I'm a classics major, and this summer I'm researching Byzantine manuscripts in the Iliad. And part of my research is coding these manuscripts onto a digital format, so it is a little bit of STEM. So my question for you is, what led you to be a classics major at Holy Cross? We're really proud to have you as an alum of the department.
Thank you. Again, as I was telling President Rigaud, that when I graduated from Regis High School, I wanted to do pre-med. Believe it or not, you're not going to believe this, but it's true, that back then, this is now 1958, before your grandparents were born, okay, is that if you went to a Catholic Jesuit school in New York City, the Jesuits, and it was 95% Jesuit, they would almost not allow you to go to anything other than a Catholic school for college. I mean, they wouldn't even send your transcript to Cornell or to Columbia or anything like that. They really wouldn't. It was just, it was accepted. They said, what do you want to do? I want to go to pre-med. The best pre-med in the world, as far as we're concerned, is Holy Cross, which actually it was. The pre-med for the Holy Cross back then and probably now, not only among Catholic schools, but among any school in the country, is a phenomenal pre-med course. And there was two possibilities, that you could either do classics or you could do straight science pre-med. And the reason I took the classics course is that I really felt that if I were just to jump into the science, I didn't feel I was 17 years old at the time, and I just didn't think that I had enough experience in other things beyond science. And I wanted to learn a little bit more about civilizations, about ancient history, about all the things that you're learning right now. And it was really not only a very good choice, but at the end of the day, from the standpoint of what I ultimately wound up doing with my life, it was absolutely essential. Because there's nothing wrong with people who are completely strict science, calculus, physics, and all that sort of stuff. That's fine. But there was a certain something that I got out of the classics that made me appreciate the world that I found myself in and the world that I'm in right now. I don't think I'd be able to understand very well the cultures in sub-Saharan Africa and in South America and the Caribbean that are very, very much part of my world now because of the diseases they have. I don't think I would have been able to understand that as well if I did something less than what I did in the classics. So it was a good choice.
Thank you. And as a follow-up, I was just wondering, Latin or Greek?
Both. No, I did. I mean, I am not familiar with what it is now, but we took 3 years of Greek, 3 years of Latin, 2 years of French, and then we took, embryology and biology and physics and chemistry and organic chemistry and the things that I think you're taking right now.
Well, you'll be pleased to know that we still make them take both Latin and Greek. So.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Students, I want to thank you so much. We have to give Dr. Fauci a few minutes right before the next event. I hope you're going to join us downstairs for the dedication ceremony. And Dr. Fauci, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to see you guys. Thank you.